You see, turn on my 24 volt and my 120 volt. Now we see my light is not energized yet. Let's see what happens when I press my normally open push button. You can probably hear the relay activating inside, the clicking sound. That's the armature getting pulled in, just like we heard before when I had it connected onto the Variac here. Every time I push my normally open push button, makes a connection to the coil, pulls in the armature, and it closes the connection between 8 and 6 to operate my load. Perfect. Okay. So the next part of our lab here says to connect a set of holding contacts in parallel with the normally open push button. All right. So what we have to be careful here in this coil, we now have two voltages operating in here. We have the 24 volt going to terminals 2 and 7, but we have 120 volt running to the first armature connection number 8 and coming out connection number 6. So I'm going to use my other armature in here, and its common connection is number 1, and its normally open connection from there should be number 3. So your other armature between 1 and 3 should be normally open. And I'm going to use two blue connectors here to symbolize putting a holding contact in place with my normally open switch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect my normally open contact in parallel with my normally open push button. Okay, to do that, I'm going to be connected to the input of my normally open push button to the common of my second armature, and then the output of my normally open push button is connected to the normally open side of that second armature. And the purpose of a holding contact is to allow, once I have current going to my coil, the connection between 1 and 3 will go from normally open to closed, and so that way I'll have the holding contact have current run through it. As long as there's current going to my coil, it will keep 1 and 3, it'll go from normally open to be closed, and then when I release my push button, then my current will flow through my holding contact between terminals 1 and 3, because I've activated my coil. Now 1 and 3 go from normally open to a closed position. So let's see if that happens. We're going to activate 120 and 24 volts. I've got nothing going on here yet. So what happens when I hit my normally open push button? Light activates, I let go, and it stays lit even when I let go, because now I have current running through my normally open contact into number 1 and out of number 3. So now I basically have current running through my low voltage side from power supply. It's going through terminal number 1 to terminal number 3. From there, holding my my relay coil activated, which allows my light to operate. If I were to break the connection here, then I would stop current going to my coil. So if I break this connection here, I've de-energized my coil and also de-energized my light. Okay, turn that off, turn that off. Just wait for my light to turn off. Takes a couple seconds here. There we go. Just going to make that connection again. The last part of this, they're asking us step 5 to de-energize and add a normally closed push button in series with the relay coil. All right, so we're going to change this up a bit, and I've got a normally closed contact over here, and I'm now going to introduce that into my circuit. So instead of coming into my normally closed contact first, I'm going to take this connection out, grab another red wire. I'm going, and you have to be able to draw a schematic drawing of this as well. Every part of this you have to be able to draw and represent your schematic from here. Coming from my power supply, we said we want to be in series with a normally closed contact before we get to our normally open. So we are now going to feed into our normally closed contact, come out of normally closed, and be in series with normally open. So I'm going to take this connection here and put it in here. Now I have my normally closed in series with my normally open, plus I still have my holding contacts in parallel with my normally open push button. So what do you think is going to happen when I activate this circuit? When I energize both 24 volt and 120, is my light illuminated? What will create my light to illuminate? What happens when I hit my normally open push button? What happens when I let go of my normally open push button? What happens when I hit my normally closed push button? Okay, so these are the things you should be able to answer. So let's turn things on and see what happens. I have my 120 and my 24 volt. We're both on right now. My light is not energized. So I'm gonna hit my normally open push button, see what happens when I let go. I pressed it, my light is energized. I let go, my light is still energized. Why? Because I've energized my coil. My coil has changed my connections 1 to 3 and closed them. Also, it has closed 8 to 6 on the 120 volt to energize my load. Since I activated my coil with my push button, I have current going continuously to my coil through my holding contacts 1 and 3, and that keeps current going to my coil to keep it activated. It's not until I hit my normally closed push button, when I break the circuit, because it's in series with my normally open, it breaks the path of current, and now it will de-energize my coil. Both of my armatures that were normally open, when the coil was activated, it closed that connection. This side, my holding contacts stayed in place, made them closed the circuit going to my load, and that stayed in place. When I hit my normally closed push button, then it broke connection, de-energized my coil. Both of my armatures went back to their original position of being normally open. De-energized my light. Okay, you should be able to draw a schematic symbol of that. Just going to de-energize my circuit here, and we're going to go on with the next part of this lab. Okay, so I'm just going to take my circuitry apart here so we can start from the beginning once we're done here, just so you guys can keep following me along as to what we're doing here. There, and there. Okay, so the second part, or the next part, sorry, what we're going to do is we're going to have 2 lamps actually. So I'm going to take this guy out of here, instead of just 1 lamp. Now we have 2, a red and the blue. Okay, so first bond that guy up. So the intent of the next lab, which is objective 4, they want us to have only momentary push buttons and a 24-volt control circuit. So we still have our 24-volt relay coil. That's our 24-volt control. We want a 120-volt load can be energized from one location. The load can be energized only from one location, but the next part is a second load will be energized when the first load is de-energized. And when this is energized, this will be de-energized. So basically only one of these lights will be energized at a time. And we got to figure out how we're going to use that using a 24-volt supply controlling a 120-volt load. Okay? So let's go ahead and connect this all up. I want you to be able to do a schematic drawing of this, ideally before we get started here. But I'm going to show you the connections of what we're going to do. We're going to use one push button, a normally open push button, to activate the coil, to activate only one light at a time. So taking my low voltage, I'm going to go into my normally open push button. We're going to come out of that normally